Welcome to another episode of The Greater Awareness Within with our host today, Mr. Brian Powers of Healing Life Studios in Laguna Niguel. Brian is an intuitive healer and counselor. He's also a relationships life counselor. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
I can tell you're doing great because there's sage all over this place.
Oh, yes.
I feel so grounded.
Yes. Yeah, it does have that tendency to do that.
It does. I'm glad we're grounded, and since we got all this electrical equipment around here, so that's an important factor.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Brian, what insightful words of wisdom do you have for us today?
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what a lot of times people come in for. They have issues or problems or things aren't going right, but they basically don't want to feel sad or don't want to feel anxious or don't want. They always have something that they want to eliminate that's going on for them. And one of the things is that we can talk about each one of those things, but the idea is the best way to not have something is to manifest something else, because it comes down to, as we're thinking about things on a spiritual level, we're talking about now, we're thinking from a non-spiritual level. We're in a physical realm level, and we're thinking about these things that make us feel bad. And there's a lot that goes into what I'm going to say, so there may be things I jump a little bit back and forth in it. But the idea is that we're manifesting how we're feeling and what's going on with us all the time. So we're the creator all the time of what's happening for us. It doesn't feel like it, doesn't seem like it. It just seems like, but when we say things like, I don't want to be sad today, or I don't want to be anxious, or, any of those things, what on a spiritual level, the I don't want part really doesn't translate. What translates is the intention of the feeling and the emotion that you're having. So if you're saying, I don't want to feel bad, what gets translated is feel bad. And there's a vibration associated with feel bad for you, whatever your vibration is, whatever. And you say, I don't want to feel bad. As soon as you say feel bad, then, your body produces this emotion, and then
you just made me feel bad.
Right?
So I need you to say something else right now.
So it's interesting, right? Because it is catchy too. If you're around people that feel that way, a lot of times you'll have the sense, you'll pick it up yourself. It's not necessarily you, but it's a vibration. It is something that you're sending out into the world. And so the idea is that we want to create a new intention. So we want the intention of, what's the opposite of feeling bad or sad? Is, let's say, feeling happy. Or feeling content. Content is an underused word, but would be heaven for most people. Yeah. And so it's like, all right, I like happy feeling, or I'd like content feeling. Rather than saying what you don't want, talk about what you do want. And that's kind of a simple way to put it, but ultimately you'll start to manifest things that you want to have rather than things you'd not like to have, because that's how it works. Is if you constantly thinking about what it is that you don't want to have, that's likely what you're going to end up with, because that's the tone and the resonating tone and the vibration that you're giving out. And so that's going to attract other energy and other experiences and other people around you that have that same outlook on life. So that's the biggest thing, is to kind of change your thought process on, how do I get out of feeling like the way that I'm feeling? Okay, well, there isn't a way to get out of the way that you're feeling. You're feeling the way you're feeling. And so the idea is, don't resist it. Okay, because if you're feeling the way you're feeling and you're resisting it, you're pretty much locking it in place. You're almost making it near for yourself to near impossible to try to overcome that when we're doing that, when we're resisting. So ultimately, resisting, understanding, then you can start to manifest what it is that you would like to have. So understanding when I'm resisting, that's what I'm asking for, is more of the same, more of that. So the idea, there's a little shortcut, you get what you resist. My teacher taught me that one. There's other sayings that are similar, but I like that one the best. That's the one I was taught when I was young. And if you think about it, you will almost always manifest what it is that you resist. And if you think about it like, as a young person, you're going to go to a gathering or a party or something like that, and you're like, I hope I don't run into so and so. Oh God, and then sure enough, you're going to run into so and so, or whatever, or they're going to bring up some topic or something like that that's just aggravating, and so you're pretty much setting yourself up for those kinds of feelings and that experience without even really realizing it. And that's kind of the part that for a lot of people, they say, well, I'm around this person, I feel bad, or if I don't feel good. So it's the other person. It's got to be the other person. I'm not that way when I'm with other people, So, but that has a lot to do with exactly what they're projecting and what their considerations are in it. We can talk at length about how they get there and how to remove them. But I just want to, for the matter of this conversation, is just to talk about them, to acknowledge that they're there.
That's an interesting concept of you manifest what you resist versus you manifest what you positively want. Like, I want to be happy, or I'm thinking pure and happy and contented thoughts. So it works both ways. I can manifest negative and positive.
Absolutely. You are completely responsible 100% for how you're feeling. And I want you.
I don't want to be responsible.
I know, right? Who does?
I want Joel to be responsible.
But if you want to be happier, if you want to have good experiences and you want to be content, you've got to be responsible. And when I say responsible, just being able to take a bow for your own doing. And a lot of times, until you learn about it, you don't know that you're even doing it. It's an automatic thing. And one of the things is, you said a little bit earlier, is that I want to do this, or I want to be that, or I want to feel this. That also is a potential trouble source, because you're actually stating that you aren't.
Oh, that's a good.
You're actually indicating that you aren't that thing, or you don't have that thing. The truth is that you are and have everything.
Okay. See you later.
And the idea is to manifest that and be able to experience that on a daily basis, on a regular basis, and therefore, once you doing that on a regular basis, people are going to bring things into your energy, into your world. They're going to bring problems. You're going to have your own karma, your own destiny, things that are going to come in that are going to require you to dip out of that space.
I have a question. So are you saying I already have everything I need? I simply need to tap into the right area, wherever it is?
See, there is some greater awareness within, Michael. You're not total loss. All right.
Thanks, Brian.
I think you're starting to get it. And the idea is that it's being able to tap into that part of you that, for a lot of people, gets hidden and buried away under a lot of trauma. A lot of, they might even say, even listening to this conversation, well, I can't do that. I can't, and as soon as you start saying I can't and I'm not and those things,
you're done.
That's a big one, because the biggest manifestation is the words I am. A lot of Hindus, a lot of monks, gurus spend a lot of time on the rock, on the mountain, and spending that is a vibration, that sound. And it actually emulates the sound from a spiritual level of I am, and I am. It's a very much the same vibration and the same vehicle that you get to access your interior source. And whatever you say or think or feel after or I am is critical, because that's going to set you up for the next series of events. If you say, people ask you, oh, how you feeling today? Oh, I'm kind of sick, or I don't feel so good. That's where it starts, right? Because you're literally, then Spirit says, okay, we're sick. So what's going to happen? You're going to feel sick. Now, not to say that you don't ever get sick or you don't have ailments, but the idea is that you can feel sick and you can be sick. Now, have you ever felt like, well, I've got something going on here, but I feel great. I got a little throat thing going on today, but I feel great. I'm feeling good. I'm ready to go. And it's not dragging you down to the degree of, something that you'd
Right.
actually consider that you're so I am is really the clarity of intent. The clarity of intention is super important. So I am all that you are. So I am that I am. Meaning, when you say I am that I am, you're suggesting that I am that I am. I am that I am. Meaning that you can be the other person's point of view and have it. So that way, when someone comes at you with the point of view of not yours, but they're coming at you, if you can be that I am, that their point of view, you can understand it, you can talk about it without being affected or upset or get angry or go out of balance within yourself. So it's important to understand that those two words and what you put behind it can really make a difference of how you're going to do in a day or how your life's going to go.
So what you're saying is that if I or any other person could properly apply the I am principle, let's say they're having a dialogue or a conversation with another person who has a completely diametric opposing viewpoint and maybe a little aggressive or hostile attitude. Are you saying if I can adopt the I am attitude towards them, that would allow me to potentially avoid the spirit of confrontation? Even though we may disagree, but we could still have harmony between us and, like what I said, avoid a spirit of contention, confrontation, or something.
Well, there's
like that.
definitely, it's all about your experience and how you're reacting to it. And if you ever been in a disagreement with somebody, and it takes two, right? It takes two to keep it up. But one person just stops arguing or stops it. And pretty soon it becomes real difficult for the person who's still upset to keep going and going and going and going. And pretty soon they're matching the energy of the person. Well, you're going to say, are you done? Well, no, I'm not done. Okay, we'll finish. Go ahead and be done. Be upset. And it looks like we have a difference of opinion on this here. And here's where I'm coming from. Are you open to that? Or let me hear where you're coming from. Talk to me. And the idea is that you're stopping to listen to get their point of view, to just weigh it, and you're considering and you're validating them. Number one, because people usually arguments or disagreements or things that are brewing are going to trigger one of those things, one of those self-created truths that we have about ourselves. That's what's going to carry the emotional charge. That's what's going to, blow up into this thing that you think is a disagreement, because you can have an diametrically opposing thought, but what makes it diametrical is the emotion that's attached to it. That's not really what we were talking about originally, but you're going to get into that arena in a conversation between two humanoids or between two anybody's, but anybody who's got, a case information or a record, a history of like that. So the idea would be in that one there is to be able to be open to getting their data first and then say, okay, and acknowledge it and appreciate it for their data because it's true to them. It's like, okay, we'll talk about the diametrically opposing. I don't know if we've ever talked about the Studebaker. This was the story that my teacher taught us, and then he was talking about the Studebaker. It used to be a car that was manufactured in the early 20th century, no longer produced today. But his opinion was, he come into the room and he just says, "Oh yeah, you're talking about cars. You're a car buff, yeah." And then he come and look at you and say, "Yeah, Studebaker's the best truck made. Period. Best truck." And you might not have that same experience or that period, okay? But if you're outside of your normal self, then you might get offended by it or something like that. No, there's no way that Ford's way better or Chevy's way better or Dodge or whatever. But if you said, I want to see what's going on over there, asking the question, well, tell me about Studebakers and what makes them so much great, what makes them the greatest truck in the world. Tell me about that. Right? That's something that would be done in a process, because I don't have that same opinion either.
Right.
But there are people that might. And what'll happen is you get to it, and they start saying, well, they had the best engine options at this thing, and if they're a car buff, they know it. But they might say, they're just the way they look and the way they feel, the fit and feel of it. And, my grandfather Johnny, he had a 1947 Studebaker extra pickup truck. It was an extra duty pickup truck, and he had it on the farm. And we'd come in from the city when I was about 5 or 6, maybe 7 years old, and I'd step on into that truck, and he'd let me drive it. I'd have so short I'd have to sit on his feet and sit forward to try to reach the pedals, but I'd drive that truck, and we'd drive it around and around the prairie, around and around the farm area, and laughing and bumping into stuff and running over bushes and laughing and giggling. And I'll just tell you, it had the best times in that truck. And then you can say, oh, I can see why this gentleman thinks that Studebakers are the best car on the road. And you know what? I can have that opinion with him, and I can let him have that opinion, meaning I don't need to put up anything against that, because to him, that's an experience. To him, that experience with his grandpa and those memories, he holds dear, and he attaches them with the experience of car riding in that Studebaker. Why would I want to take that away from him?
So it's more of a subjective
It's actually
than objective.
Yeah, it's really understanding where the other person's point of view is coming from. It's having the intention to pay attention to get what the other person is saying. And when they tell you the story, and then you could get it like, oh, okay, I get it. End of story. Say, yeah, I see it. It's great. I love it. And you could literally be over. So a lot of times it's really just kind of coming from the point of view of learning and understanding the clarity of the intention, the clarity of what it is that they're talking about. So ultimately, that would make you happier if you're not getting into arguments left and right, when you're always trying to be right or have your point of view be the dominant point of view. Everyone wants to be heard, I think, but the most important thing is to be willing to listen.
So I think what I'm hearing here is that every person who's running for a political office needs to apply these principles.
Yeah, well,
because they all want to be right.
Yeah, but one of the principles is also you've got to be true. You've got to be honest.
Oh, forget it then.
And you've got to have the true well-being of others ahead of yourself.
Well, we all hope that people in those positions would be that way.
I believe there are some. I do believe that, and I do believe some go in with that, and some don't remain that way. I do believe that the kid get thwarted, but how to manifest feeling happier and being happier. I mean, ultimately, it really comes a lot to it's how we think. So if you want to if you want to be happier, you have to think happier thoughts. I know it sounds kind of cliche.
No, I think that makes sense. So in a way, what we're doing is we are sabotaging ourselves from being happy.
Well, ultimately, yes, because we're convincing ourselves that we're unhappy. See, that thing happened. See, I'm out of my water, so I'm unhappy. Or the things that we're focusing on are the parts of us that we don't want, or the parts of us that we don't like, or the aspect of a personality that we don't care for. And so when you focus on that, and that's what your focus is, you're going to get more of it.
That it reminds me of a movie that we used to watch when I was in sales training for a company, and it was called Pack Your Own Chute. Have you heard of that?
No.
I think it's very applicable in this instance, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's some crossover. So the basic premise of this is that you're responsible for how you feel and your own actions. And in the movie, it shows an example of a guy who's driving down the street, and this man cuts him off, and it's totally the other guy's fault. Just cuts him off, runs him off the road, and the guy goes, "That guy almost ran me off the road. That guy made me mad."
Of course.
And then the exercise is to ask yourself the question, really? So you basically gave power over your life to that man, and allowed him to make you angry, where before you were completely happy driving down the road, everything was cool, but that guy cut you off and you allowed him to take control over your life at that moment, and he made you mad. So it's something along those lines?
Well, there's definitely that in it. Because ultimately, we'll talk about it more in some other episodes. But when you come in for session, you're going to find that your responsibility is in everything that you see, hear, feel, touch. It's all about your own personal experience, and you're 100% responsible for it. You get there, not in time. You don't just come right in. But anytime... because we're talking about two different things. We're also talking about the mind, and we're talking about the way our mind works. And ultimately, typically speaking, like in that particular case, a good story. Again, when my teacher told me about this one was pretty funny. And the thing is that you can miss something about it. Like, one is making you mad, but then once you recognize you got mad, staying mad or why it's there, or there's a charge to it. So it can kind of stay with you like a resonant energy. This happened between a couple of friends of mine and my teacher. And they were driving down the freeway and moving along. Everything's doing great. Just the same exact story. A guy in another car comes over and literally sweeps in front of him and puts on the brakes, and we got to slam on the brakes. So everybody kind of shifted around in the car so as not to hit him. And the driver of the car, who was not the teacher, was visibly angry, but wanted to cuss. Like he was super mad, and then looked over at the teacher and was like, "Oh, okay, I gotta behave. I'm here with our teacher." And the teacher looks over at her and says, "Are you going to let that asshole get away with that?" and tries to push on the accelerator. Literally, like, go ram that bastard, dude. Don't let him get away with that. And like totally, literally made up this, like ridiculous, aggressive. But he was serious as he's saying it, and pretty soon everybody in the car is laughing, just like you had to chuckle there. Yeah. Because it's so ridiculous. Yeah. But the idea is it allowed to move beyond the anger into a laughter, which then takes off that energy, right? So that way you can laugh about it, because is it that big of a deal? And then ultimately you really only get pissed off at the things that you've done to others. And ultimately, you have a responsibility, and we get back to the responsibility part. So then the question is, okay, driver, how many times have you done that to somebody else on the road? That exact thing, where you're like, "Oh, I'm getting over. Got over. Sorry, this is just me." So the idea is that how many times have you done that before? Where does that energy come from? That energy, he's not making you feel mad. He's triggering something that's already inside of you. And the likelihood is that he's triggering something that you've got stored there as what we'll use the word a transgression, something that you wouldn't want done to yourself, that's been done to you, but you've done it to other people. So in that breath, you can be accountable and responsible for your own thing.
I totally get it. Brian, this is really, really interesting stuff. And I'd like to know if we can continue the conversation about this on our next podcast. We'll just do a part 2. Would that be cool with you?
Well, yeah, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's pick this up at our next podcast. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Be sure and catch us on our next edition of Discovering the Greater Awareness Within with your host, Brian Powers. And we'll see you then.